All right, guys. So you may have already seen this viral clip of an author, Bethany Mandel, who went on our former show, Rising, with Robbie and with Brianna. And Brianna asked her what should have been a very simple question, especially Bethany just wrote a book that is effectively about like her being anti-woke and a pushback on wokeness. So Brianna asked her a very simple question. It doesn't go particularly well. Let's take a look at that.
Of Americans consider themselves very liberal, and probably fewer of them consider themselves to be woke. And so, you know, when we talk about traditional,
what does that mean to you? Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. I mean, woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it. It is sort of the understanding that we need to totally reimagine and redo society in order to create hierarchies of oppression. It's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
So
no bueno.
Listen, I want to be compassionate because I've certainly had brain malfunctions on air. But I will say her response to this, which I had millions of views on Twitter. Everybody was passing this thing around. Her response really made things a lot worse because she tried to blame Brianna, who I didn't even think Brianna wasn't asking like an aggressive question.
No,
this is like a really basic, you know, okay, let's just make sure we're all on the same page and define our terms here. So Bethany went on Twitter, and in part, what she said is, just before we went on air, Brianna Joy Gray was on a hot mic. I heard her demeaning parenting in general and colorful and nasty terms, stating parents only have kids in order to perpetuate their own narcissism. Robbie responded, there are some good ones and some bad ones, and she said that threw her off for the segment. I mean, first of all, I just don't believe you. But second of all, second of all, like you're like 7 minutes into the segment when this happens, and it's like only then that the parenting, the hit on parenting before the segment even started really gets to you.
Look, take the L. That's my response. Just take it.
Sometimes you just got to take the L. That's it.
Sometimes, listen, I've been on the other side of that clip. I get it. All right.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect. That said, I think that she did herself a disservice. And look, the fair critique is if you are going to write a whole book about this, then you actually, and you're going to go on TV to promote it. Yeah, you actually kind of do need a 15-second answer. And I could give you a better one, Bethany. Read my book because it's not something that I can summarize in a single sentence. There you go. That's actually a decent one. Or the hollow and false moral superiority on racial and gender issues. That's not necessarily, in my opinion, the best definition, but that's one that you could probably put together in a single sentence. Or you could just say, look, it's one of those things like the famous Supreme Court quote on pornography. You know it when you see it. I think all of those are valid responses. I don't think that any of them really capture the essence of what it actually means. I actually think that Supreme Court one I laid out is probably the best definition, unfortunately, just because, as you have showed, Krystal, it can mean anything to anyone, which is part of the problem with trying to define. That's why this clip went so viral, I think, for a couple of reasons. Because, I mean, when you see the right claiming that the Silicon Valley Bank bailout is all about wokeness, you realize the term has lost any sort of real meaning. And so it's in the context of that moment where people look at this and it's like, okay, this kind of gives up the game that you just are using the word wokeness to define anything that you don't like and that you object to. I think there are kind of two components. And the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because I actually do think, obviously, it's a contested term. Obviously, the definition of it in some corners of the right has been expanded to just mean like anything I don't like. And I'm just going to, you know, throw this term out about a bank bailout or about environmental policy. Like whatever it is I disagree with, I'm just going to say it's woke and use that as my catch-all phrase for something that I disagree with. But you know, the original idea of wokeness was like an awareness of injustice, which, okay, I have no problem with that whatsoever. Where my critique of wokeness comes in is when you add authoritarian tactics in service of supposed social justice ends. To me, that's one piece of it.
The other piece of it is a level of superficiality that distracts from deeper problems. So this is some of what I talked about in my monologue about how, you know, the anti-woke people, some of them have adopted similar authoritarian tactics that we should also stand against. But, you know, when you're using the tactics of censorship, canceling, et cetera, that's the authoritarian piece. The superficial piece is, you know, when you're putting up a Black Lives Matter banner on the Amazon website and pretending like this has anything to do with social justice, or, you know, putting the first Black woman vice president up there and pretending like this is some victory for all Black people, when actually the policy aims and core values that she's pursued have been very damaging at times for those communities. So to me, those are the two pieces of it. It's like authoritarian tactics plus a sort of superficial personal identity lens of politics that erases everything else.
Yeah, I think superficiality and authoritarianism are the two hallmarks of wokeness. I mean, I live in a neighborhood where it'll be like Black Lives Matter flag, Ukraine flag, trans flag, gay pride flag, and then that very same person will lobby against affordable housing. And you're like, well, hold on a second. So what's going on here? Are we talking about your home values, or are we talking about Black Lives Matter? Because those actually are pretty incongruent if you were to get into it. But that's the whole point, is you're not actually getting into it. So I think virtue signaling and superficiality, and specifically authoritarianism, at the very heart of what all of this is. And I think it is unfortunate that Bethany was unable to get at that, because I think, you know, rightfully people not even necessarily should be, quote, opposed to it. But I don't think that that is a functional way to have a society with 330 million people of differing views and backgrounds, of ethnicities. We are one of the most heterogeneous nations literally on all of planet Earth. It somehow seems to work. Sometimes it doesn't. And that authoritarian mindset, by the way, and you pointed this all the way out too, you know, look, I'm here in my hometown of College Station, Texas. I hate wokeness, but let me tell you something. I hate oppressive evangelical culture just as much, because, and one of the reasons that I rebel against wokeness is because I know what it is like from the other side. You know, I grew up in a place and in a time where questioning the Iraq War here in my hometown, or really just anything on social issues, or even, you know, raising a thought which didn't abide by the Southern Baptist Convention, was crushed and was looked down upon with such nastiness and with censorship also, even from the highest levels, including some of my teachers. I've given the evolution example here before on the show. So I know what it is. And also I lived in the Middle East, in a very oppressive authoritarian country in Qatar. So these are places where, you know, it fundamentally comes down to, in my opinion, for some people, a rejection of that authoritarianism. But it doesn't necessarily need to also be kind of a, how would you say, a Trojan horse for authoritarianism of another kind.
Yes, well said. And I think where I really differ, because Bethany did go on Twitter and give her considered definition, short definition of wokeness. She said it's a radical belief system suggesting our institutions are built around discrimination, claiming all disparity as a result of that discrimination, seeks a radical redefinition of society in which equality of group result is the endpoint enforced by an angry mob. And I think where I really differ from people like Bethany and other, like, you know, anti-woke activists at this point is that the tactics are authoritarian and quite terrible for a democratic society, right? The tactics are completely unacceptable. But the aims are actually quite small. And, you know, to get a certain like racial quota diversity metric on a board, or to have some like corporate virtue signal, or like I said, to just, you know, change the personal identity characteristics of the vice president of the United States. And my half joking definition of wokeness is that it's basically like a CIA op to disrupt progressive groups and keep them focused on interpersonal squabbles and cancel culture among themselves, rather than actually pursuing the more transformational end goals that their groups are supposed to ultimately be about. It's my half-joking definition of wokeism, but there's some truth to that. I mean, no one has been more hurt by this cancel culture direction of the left than progressive organizations who are supposed to be getting things done in the world. And instead, as Ryan Grimm has documented at great length, are spending all their times like fighting with each other and, you know, taking days off to deal with their supposedly toxic workplace.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. You know, I think it is an op really on everybody, because it also, you know, there's a certain type of conservative mind which this is all they think about. You know, I think we were all chatting privately recently about the more recent Shane Gillis, the special that he did, which is out there on YouTube. The comedian, he talks about his Fox News dad. He's like, guy who lives in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He's like, can you believe what's going on the southern border? He's like, he's so mad he can't even explain. And it's like, yeah, it's like that's, you know, it's weaponized in two directions as a distraction. So, and look, I can be guilty of it, and shit drives me crazy too. I get it. I get why all of this stuff works. So yeah, I think it was unfortunate for her, but I don't know, maybe honestly I have less empathy, just because I'm like, if you're going to do an entire book and you're literally going to go on a promo tour for it, then, you know, that's on you. That's one of the most basic questions literally that there is. And I think that's why it went viral. That's why it went viral.
I'm trying to be nice, but if I'm being honest, I don't have much sympathy either. Because it's such a basic question. It's like, come on, get it together.
Right. That'd be like if somebody asked you and I, if you and I on somebody's show and they go, what is populism? And I was like, well, it's just like, yo, dude.
I wrote a book about it, but I can't explain it. It was like,
right. Like, come on. Yeah.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.